It's not my cables.
That's okay. It's not a big deal. I can always
be able to just kind of.
I can always run a filter over it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Like a low pass filter that'll just get rid of it.
Okay.
And whatever you did, it's already a little better. So.
Okay. It might just be the cable then.
No worries. I gotta get the incense and start from the video.
Trying to
exorcise
make it,
the demons.
Welcome. You are entering into a strange dimension. A dimension where narratives from across space and time come together. Narratives that could have, might have, or should have been all exist here in one space. This is Cinemasters Ultimate Timeline.
Welcome back to Cinemasters. This is the show where we watch movies and then pitch them back to one another. My name is Janglez the Strange, and I'm joined today by Alessa.
Hello.
And today we are looking at Superman, like the original Superman with Christopher Reeves, all the way back from 1978. Why did you pick this movie?
Because this movie is near and dear to my heart.
Okay, but why?
I've seen this movie too many times, despite how long it is. And I think that it really shaped me as a person. As cheesy as it is to say. Because,
you like the female version of Clark Kent? No,
I wish. That would just be Supergirl.
No, Kara Danvers is different. I mean, Clark Kent is well-mannered and good-intentioned, but a little bit meek. Do you think that describes you?
And very awkward, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, watching Clark while he's, in the office, I'm, getting, what's it called? I'm getting, anxious or, nervous for him. I'm if that was me, I would be, hiding out in the bathroom, oh my god, get your shit together, Alessa.
Is that what you do when we have, practice?
No.
In the bathroom, fucking learn how to play the bass. I do that with guitar sometimes. I'd be like, I fucking wrote this song. How do I not? Anyway. Yeah, this movie was so long.
Yeah, we both watched it at 2 times speed.
I watched the action parts at 2 times speed, but I needed to get the dialogue, so I watched it at 1/2. One and 1/2, sorry.
I already knew everything that happened, including most of the conversations. So
I'd never seen this movie before. I had never ever seen this movie before, except I didn't realize, but everything about Superman is from this movie. This movie is so rooted in pop culture that every Superman movie references this movie in its visual storytelling, or at least in some kind of gag or canon thing. Some of them are even, some of the more modern Superman shows are even based off this movie. They're a continuation.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
It's I want to call it the best Superman movie, because I don't think we've had a Superman movie quite as good as it since it came out.
No.
You know?
I should also say this is the first episode of Suptember. I totally forgot to mention that.
Oh.
This is the first episode of Suptember. So today we're talking about Superman, of course, and there'll be superhero movies all month long. I totally forgot to mention that at the beginning. I was just excited to talk about this movie.
Because it's just such a good movie.
I don't know about that. I didn't hate this movie at all. It just some parts of it to me were perplexing. Perplexing. So
okay.
I honestly feel like this should have been a TV show, because the events that happen in the show are so separate from one another, except for the characters that take place within them.
Yeah, there's it almost suffers from the and then.
Yeah.
But I think because everything is so tied in together so well,
I'm not sure
that it works as a movie.
I think you just have.
But I do see your point. What?
I think you just have nostalgia glasses on.
Oh, definitely. I grew up on this movie.
It was just hilarious that you can have nostalgia glasses for a movie that came out 25 years before you were born.
Yeah. No, 20. 20 on the dot, basically.
20 on the dot, yeah. You're 98?
I'm 97.
So 22. 21.
20.
Yeah.
19? Math?
Yeah. Whatever. Some numbers. We're art students. So, yeah. This movie, I think, because I do think that, and I thought about doing this for my pitch, I do think that this movie, like, they have the whole thing with Jor-El, his Clark's real father, on Krypton.
Yep.
That could have easily been a whole episode.
Yep.
And then Martha and Jonathan finding Clark could have been a whole episode. Clark in high school could have been a whole episode.
Yep.
Right? Clark finding the fortress could have been a whole episode.
Yep.
And then Clark returning 12 years later to Metropolis could have been a whole episode. Like, you could easily have done this in, like, 10 or 12 miniseries.
Yeah.
Episode miniseries. And I think it would have, like, it's just supposed to follow Superman. All the other characters are kind of move around him. Because, like, for the most part, like, most of the characters that are introduced in the beginning aren't around when Clark is older.
Yeah.
Like, there's a cameo from Lois Lane, which, by the way, was super weird because she's like a little girl and Clark's in high school. Mm-hmm. How much younger she is than Clark?
I don't think it's that. I think maybe like 10 years. But at that point where they're working together, I think that...
Well, let's... I mean, if we did the math it out, Clark was 18 because he was in his last year of high school, I assume.
Yeah.
So Clark's 18, I'm guessing, plus 12 years is 30.
Yep.
So if Lois is 10 years younger, she's 20.
Okay, that's a little bit more of a weird gap. I feel like 5 years from now, like 5 years later would have been a little
25
bit
to
more.
35 is not 25 to 35 is not irregular. It's rare, but I wouldn't say not doable. 30 to 20 is a huge difference.
Also, I feel, could she be 30 or 20 though? Because, I mean, getting a job right out of high school, like writing in like a big newspaper like that.
It depends. I don't think it's. It also is the 70s, right? So people would get jobs like that right out of high school. I don't think she would have like a big reporting job right out of high school like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. 10 years seems like a bit much, but it did seem to me like she was probably like 12. So maybe 8 or like 14. She looked pretty young there, though.
She did, yeah.
Golly gee, I think I just saw a dude race past the train.
It's so cheesy. And like the whole, like, everything with the animation.
Oh, yeah, I loved it. The way he runs, too. Oh, so funny.
It's so cheesy. And
So
when
good,
the water, or sorry, when he's filling in the dam to make sure that the water doesn't, overrun the village.
Yeah.
You could tell that it was like miniature,
but it was
and
still
it was
great.
so cute. It was so cool. I love it.
It's
I
still
love
great.
it.
My biggest problem actually with this movie isn't the plot, because it's so cheesy. A lot of the plot conceits I can sort of forgive.
Yeah. Like what?
Well, like the fact that he goes back in time to save Lois.
Okay, yeah.
That, first of all, doesn't make any sense because time travel in movies you have to be careful with.
Yes.
You have to explicitly go out of your way to explain how time travel works beforehand in order to make sure that continuity is going to work. Because he basically goes back in time and saves Lois. But, like,
Yep.
Did he stop the missiles, too? Like, that was never explained.
Yeah, they never tell you. And, like, also, because she was saying, like, oh, the gas station blew up, and, like, so all that stuff obviously still happened. So why isn't her car in the crack again?
Exactly. The
why
continuity...
is the earthquake not still happening?
The continuity around this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I fixed that in my pitch.
There was nothing around trying to, like, even saying that I mean, they kept suggesting, Jor-El kept suggesting that Superman, that Clark wasn't allowed to interfere with human history, right?
Yeah.
So that was at least established, but it was unclear as to what he meant by that, because it's never established that Superman could go back in time.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're like a fan of the comics, in which case the only thing Superman can't do is what he hasn't tried yet. That's literally canon. Mm-hmm. Superman can do anything except for what he hasn't tried yet.
So cheesy.
It's so dumb. So that did bother me, but it's still excusable because this movie is so dumb. Like cheesy, if you want to call it that, but it is dumb. The thing that actually I found the most egregious was how long the movie was.
And I think they could have chopped at least half an hour down if they had...
easily. The editing alone could have just been much faster.
Just, like, there's certain things... If we're talking on, like, you know... As an editor myself, not a film editor, but as an editor, if you have a really long piece and you can find the occasional sentence that has, you know, in regards to...
Yeah.
You can shorten that down to regarding.
Yeah.
That takes out 2 words. And you just keep doing that and doing that and doing that and taking out little pieces until you have, like, this nice short piece that is, like, succinct, right?
Yeah.
And you can do that same thing in this movie. There was parts where I was like, we didn't need to watch Clark climb through the ice in the palace. We didn't have to watch him do that. We could have just had, like, oh, he's here, and then the palace is here, and then, wow, there's this little console in the middle, and he's there. Like, that could have been so much... Like, that could have been 3 short shots, and, like, easily. That's all we needed.
Exactly. The biggest complaint to me, because I was actually having a lot of fun with Lois and Clark's interview. I was like, this is so cheesy, and I love it. Like, their flirting is just so disastrously awful, but it's funny. It's fun, and it feels fun between them. And then they go flying, and she has this weird voiceover.
The soliloquy. Yeah, it was just like, that is so... uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable. She's like, do you know what you do to me? Oh, can you read my mind? I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
It's so strange to watch that take place, because I'm like, show, don't tell, right? We can already see all of this happening on, like, based on the scene before. The flight thing was kind of like really long. Also, he drops her at one point. Like, that's totally superfluous. Nothing about that was necessary.
You can't have a flying character who doesn't drop the main, like, the lead female. Like, you just can't. It just always happens.
Yeah,
like,
it's
it is
totally
the biggest
superfluous.
cliche.
It's a scene that would have been like the first thing I would have cut. Also, when Krypton exploded,
and they spent like literally 6 minutes.
6 minutes, like, filming everything happening. I was like, I understand, like, you want to show some vignettes of things happening, but you have to remember, like, all of Krypton right now is just a sound stage. Like, it's all set, so there's nothing really interesting happening. Just blow the fucking planet up and let's move on. Yeah,
they had a lot of the same shots as well, like the crystals going into the building, and, like, they did that, like, 3 times, and then the one person getting hit by the crystal, and, like, yeah, we didn't need all that.
And the weird thing is I don't even think that this movie would have changed that much if you had just edited some parts out, like you were saying. It would have just become more succinct. I still think it would suffer from the problem of and then. But it's supposed to be all of Superman's origin story, so it's forgivable. I do think that there needs to be a conflict that runs all the way through. Like, from beginning to end, there's not a real conflict.
Yeah.
And which is weird. I know he's supposed to come back in Superman 2, but I thought they were going to have General Zod and Non and the female, I can't remember what her name is, Ava Ren or something like that. I thought they were going to have them be the villains for the first one, because then I was like, oh, this is good setup. Like, you're setting up your villains at the very beginning, and then you're going to have them show up, and that's what's going to make Clark be Superman. But it's not. The main villain of this whole thing is Luthor, who's a complete and absolute ponce. He's not a sinister at all.
No, he's not.
And Eve Tessmacher and Otis they're just fools, and it's hard to watch.
I actually found the 3 of them hilarious. Ugh. I loved watching them because, you know, it's the cliches. I'm here for the terrible cliches.
I felt like I was watching Rocky and Bullwinkle when they were doing whole. Okay, in Rocky and Bullwinkle, it's like, you know, you get Moose and Squirrel who are trying to just live their lives, but they keep getting, like, tagged on by Boris and Natasha, these, like, stereotypical, terrible, like, racist caricatures of Russians, and who, like, try to, like, blow up the U.S. with missiles, and they're always like, I am Boris and this is Natasha and we are going to try and destroy Squirrel and Moose. Like, it's just so weird. And like, when they were doing the missile stuff, like recalculating it and how I was like, nobody is this slapstick. Like, it's so dumb.
I know, it's amazing.
Oh no, I would have totally treated Luthor much differently, because the plot, the actual way he like tricks Clark into looking in the lead box and finding the kryptonite, I was like, oh, that's actually really clever. I actually did think that was clever in the moment. But his whole plan to like blow up the San Andreas fault and then create new real estate, like, that's so convoluted.
It's so convoluted, but it, at the same time, it makes you wonder, would it work?
No.
No?
No.
You don't think it would work at all?
I think you'd wind up destroying a lot of land, but it's not like it would fall into the ocean. Like, that's not how land works. I think you just wind up like creating huge volcanic and earthquake activity along the San Andreas fault, causing huge amounts of damage, potentially killing people and destroying cities, but I don't see it falling into the ocean. Like, it's two tectonic plates. That's not how... It's not like land is just hovering above water.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I think there's a better way to do that. Would have been like, what if Lex was planning to do that so that he could then like be part of the repair operation and make tons of money that way?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Also, the way Superman fixes it by like raising the Earth back up in order to like stop the fault line is like, that's not how fault lines work. But you can't ask questions like that of a movie like this.
Yeah, well, that, and the worst offender of that part for me was actually that when he moved the fault lines back together, the dirt that had fallen in was like, whoop, back up top, and I was like, that's just awful.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say before though is Luthor isn't introduced until Clark comes back.
Yep.
To Metropolis. That's over the halfway mark, I think. Which means your villain of the whole story isn't introduced until over the halfway mark. I don't think that's great storytelling. You need some kind of motivator.
Yeah.
And Clark and Luthor don't even meet until like the third act.
Yeah.
That's not great storytelling, because it's just, what's Clark's motivation? You know what I mean? I think as an origin story, which is what I think ultimately this is, that's what I treated it as in my pitch. It's
supposed to be, yeah.
It's an origin story. I think you need to have, you can introduce Lex, but it has to be like at the end, and he's not the villain. Like, this has to be, like, for me, I think Clark's origin story as Superman has to be him getting over his own like insecurities or something like that. You know what I mean? You can have a representational villain, but the actual point of the origin story would be that Clark is going to become Superman.
Yeah, I think as well that if we were going to talk about it like this, the best way to do it as an origin story would be to have it up until the point where his suit first comes on in public and he's out saving people, and then have it end there. Yeah,
that's sort of what I did in my pitch. Like, then that's kind of what they did in Smallville too, the TV series.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't watched it in a long time, and I definitely didn't watch the whole thing because it's long. But at the very end is sort of like the rule around writing stories for Smallville was no flights, no tights. So it starts with him in Smallville, and then later seasons he moves to Metropolis, and it's slowly him learning to become Superman. But he doesn't reveal they never have him fly or reveal his like Superman suit until the very end, where he finally is like, now I'm Superman. So Smallville was all about Clark becoming Superman before he was Superman.
So that's what this movie should have been.
Yeah.
As like, here is what our character is going to be.
Yeah. Well, we all know, it's sort of like we all know who Superman is. So how does he get to the Superman bit?
Yeah.
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 I don't know. Because I mean, also, they're such fools. Eve and also, is it Luthor or Luthor? The way Otis was always
Luthor,
Mr. Luthor. Mr. Luthor.
Yeah, it was always Luthor. So in my own pitch, I wrote it as Luthor, and Google Docs didn't,
No, it's spelled that way, but I always thought it was pronounced Luthor.
That's what I thought too.
Not Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Whatever. So weird. I just want to talk about some of the effects, like in my goods and bads. I loved the floating mirror that is the Phantom Zone that they trap like Zod and Non. It's just so funny looking. Like, no, help us.
Just like a 2D, like just flipping through space. It's so good.
So funny. I do think actually that the whole fall of Krypton as a planet could have made for easily its own movie in itself, just following Jor-El and even some of the other characters. I can't remember what all the characters on the planet were named.
Well, there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
But like all of the council.
Yeah,
members,
but even talking about Jor-El's sister and her husband, like there's a whole cast of characters there. And just like what happens there leading up to before they, do that as a whole movie. That could easily make a whole movie.
That'd be a really cool prequel. Yeah.
And you could have it all be like all about climate change and whatnot, right? As a metaphor for climate change, not about, but how like people are like, no, nothing's changing, nothing's happening. You know what I mean? And you're like, yeah, but the whole place is gonna die,
ready to blow.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Literally.
I thought that was interesting. Every time Jor-El would hold up a crystal or Krypton, the only thing that would go through my mind would just be like, because he would be like, and I shall leave the child behind all of my knowledge. And he's holding up this like long crystal. And I was like, and my crystal dildo. Like it's just so phallic.
I didn't understand at the very start when he was like holding the really long, it was like a tube, I guess, crystal tube thing, and he's like, and this serves as proof, and I'm like, what? How like I also can hold rods in a non-sexual way. Also, I love when Martha and Jonathan find Clark the first time, when they find the baby, they're like, he's just a baby. I'm like, no, that's clearly a toddler. That is a toddler.
That's a toddler. That's not a baby. Also, when he like picks up the tractor and then they're looking at him, and you just get like a straight on little child penis. Like, whoa. Did not need to see that.
The 70s were wild.
The 70s were wild. Like, you could easily just have like blocked that out of the shot. I mean, it doesn't matter. We've all seen toddlers running around like outside when they're that little. It just was very unusual for a movie.
Yeah.
To see that in a movie. Let me see here. I love the cheesy sound effects. I thought it would have been interesting to explore like human exceptionalism as Superman. Because he's like clearly like better than everyone else, and just explore it that way. Like, what does that mean? From like a Fountainhead or a Ayn Rand kind of philosophy around, should we do things for the better of everyone or for the better of us? Lois Lane, when he like saves her from the helicopter, is in like the classic yellow dress from like all the comics and shit. I thought that was a nice touch. That was really well done.
Yeah.
The flirting is terrible, and I did love it. Yeah, longest fucking movie ever. That's what I wrote. Cool.
It was, but I like. Okay, I'll go through my likes. Okay.
That was my likes. Okay. That was mostly my likes and dislikes.
Mine was like, there's just so many things going on, and I love layers.
You like world building.
I love world building, yes, and layers, and there's so much in this movie. Like, we learn about what Lex is planning. We also, just see like he's a pretty brutal dude. He just kills a guy, just straight up throws him on the tracks.
Yeah, that was weird because they're just like, he like picks up the hat and he's like, oh no, what happened to him? And I'm like,
how can you not
body
tell?
And blood everywhere?
It would be a disaster zone.
Ooh.
So I loved all the layers, and I actually, as weird as it sounds, as a writer / editor, I love like the compounding stories like this, where it's not so much an and then, but it just keeps building. And I had no problem that Lex was introduced halfway through the movie. I I'm here for Superman. I'm here for the tights.
I wonder for the tights. Okay, that tells me a lot about why you like this movie.
No.
Alyssa, would you say that Superman was a sexual awakening for you?
No, actually. Clark might have been.
That's what I meant. Is this movie a sexual awakening for you?
No.
I wonder if the reason that you like this over, say, the Percy Jackson, when we did that one, right? I wonder if the reason that you like this one better is because it feels more like an anthology.
Yes.
Because so the character, it's all about Clark and Superman, but it's like, here's how he would, here's how he came about, and then the next story is the Fortress of Solitude, and the next story is him in Metropolis, and the next story is him and Lex Luthor. Like, it almost does feel like you're reading different issues of the comic. As an anthology. You
nailed it. Like, that's what I love about it. Like, it just keeps building up as not as an anthology, because it is one
movie,
piece,
but it feels like one.
It feels like one. Yeah. So you nailed it. I think that the hecticness of the Daily Planet was actually like one of the things that made me want to be a writer, because I just saw it and I was like, that right there is glory. Like, I want to do that. But now, obviously things have changed a lot since the 70s, and
also most people work from home.
Yeah, you're not gonna find a newspaper that has people sitting at a table together, like 4 people on a table with a typewriter.
What the heck is a typewriter?
I have 3 of them, okay? Don't even. I really liked Lex Luthor and his shenanigans. I guess it's not his shenanigans, it's his friends' shenanigans.
Well, he's also a little like, they're like, oh, I'm so smart. He keeps saying he's so smart, but he doesn't actually do anything that's that smart.
No, he really doesn't. Other than that one thing we're hiding.
That was pretty clever. I also love his wigs.
I thought the wigs were pretty funny. And then we get the classic bald Lex right at the end.
Well, because if you pay attention, he's been changing wigs every scene, but it never they never draw attention to it. That's good storytelling.
Yeah, well, that's like the classic villain though is bald. So
Luthor's always been bald. Yeah, so
yeah. I loved the music.
Oh, that theme. That's a classic.
Yeah. I looked it up, and I was kind of feeling, I say feeling, for a reason, but I was feeling similarities between this and the not Lord of the Rings, Jesus, the Star Wars theme. Yeah. And it's John Williams did both movies. And they were within a year of each other. So I could feel like there was that same, like, here's the big theme at the start, and then it kind of dies down to this, like, nice orchestral thing with the violins.
If you listen over the credits, he does the theme. Like, so instead of doing the Star Wars theme, he does the Superman theme, but then he, like, drops into this, like, dun 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 dun, and he like drops down into it, and it's almost exactly like that sort of middle section after the Star Wars fanfare.
Yeah,
like almost exactly.
It is, and then it builds up as you're going, and I'm talking about like now at the start of the movie, and it builds up as you get into that first scene, and that's what happens in Star Wars 2. And I was like, these are my two, they're my 2 favorite movies I think of all time, and
the first Star Wars,
similarities are really wild.
A New Hope and Superman 1978.
Yeah, those are the 2 movies that built me as a person.
Have you seen Jurassic Park?
No.
Oh my god, you now have friendship homework. Jurassic Park is John Williams music, but also with dinosaurs, and it's also ridiculously clever.
Okay, I'll watch
smart.
it. Ugh, I think I've seen like bits and pieces, but I've never actually watched it all the way through.
The first one. Yeah. Should we get into pitches? Are we feeling there? Are we feeling like, or is there more stuff you want to go over?
Okay, I had one other little thing that I thought was really cute about Clark / Superman was the fact that even though he had his tights on and he was flying, he never lost like the charm of being the awkward dude where he's like, okay, bye, every time that he left a person. And I thought that was the cutest thing ever. Like, it's so endearing.
I'm just a friendly neighbor from another planet.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel
so
like,
good.
to me, I would be so suspicious of that. Like, you can call me a cynic or whatever, but like, I would be so suspicious. I'd just be like, yo, that dude is trying to sell something. Like, he's trying to sell us something.
It seems like it, but
or he's part of a
cult.
cult.
A different time.
Or he's part of a cult.
Yeah, that too.
I think they've done a lot of interesting things with Superman since then, like the whole idea of truth, justice, in the American way, right? Like, what does that even mean, the American way? Like, that's, depending on who you ask, that's pretty subjective. Same with truth and justice. Whew. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that would be really interesting to see how Superman would unfold or look like in today's political landscape. And they've done stuff like that.
I'd be a little scared to find out.
They've done stuff like that with him against Batman, because they both represent like different sides of like crime fighting and of morality even. So they've had them fight. So, and they're still friends and they fight, and it's fucked up. Yeah.
I mean, that happens in the MCU as well.
Yeah, they weren't friends in the oh yeah, sorry. I thought you were talking about like the DCEU and Batman versus Superman.
No.
Why did you say that name?
Like, yeah, the MCU with like
Tony
Civil
and
War and stuff.
yeah, Tony and Cap, when they fight, because they're like friends, but they're on opposing. Well, that was also because they were on opposing sides of the Sokovia Accords, but also because Bucky, who is Cap's friend, just murdered, or Tony just found out that he was the one who murdered Howard, his father.
Yeah.
So there's some personal shit going on in there. But yeah, it's good storytelling.
Yeah.
It's good storytelling. Anything else? Or should we get into pitches?
No, I just love this movie.
I can see why you love this movie. I might have loved it more if my parents were trying to get me to sit down and do something for 3 hours so they wouldn't have to like deal with me, and I'd watched it when I was younger. But
I think that's what my parents did. That's why I watched the movie so much.
I am not a huge fan of this movie. There's some parts, like particularly when Lex was like, so if he's telling us that like his planet is in this part of the galaxy, it follows that there must have been some debris from that planet fall here on Earth, and you're like, how does that follow? Like, where's the logic behind that? It also follows that parts of that planet of Krypton must take his powers away. How the fuck did you come to that conclusion?
I don't know. The way that I think that I read it was that he was thinking that the radiation specifically from his planet would like make him weak or something.
But how do you even come to that conclusion? Like, does radiation from our planet make us weak?
We don't know. We've never, I mean, people have been to the moon and into outer space, but we've never left our own solar system, so who knows?
Yeah,
we
but
could be like,
does that radiation
like
from the
Kryptonians.
sun or radiation from, because our planet gives off radiation, it's actually radioactive, and parts of our certain kinds of stone like granite are more radioactive than other parts. But like, I don't actually know if our planet gives off like I'm not a astrophysicist. I don't know enough about like Earth radiation, but it sounds to me like this was a convenient, like, Superman needs a weakness and we need Luthor to have that weakness, so ergo kryptonite, ergo Luthor needs to have access to it and understand how it works, and because he's Luthor, he can just be super smart and we can explain it away that way, but like, not great.
No, I think that technically, or like, I'm pretty sure that if we're like thinking back to Superman's original creation, I think that it's supposed to be a mix of the gravitational pull of Earth plus the yellow, like the rays from a yellow sun.
Yeah, so our yellow
from the yellow sun.
I think it's like our yellow sun causes causes all Kryptonians to have like superpowers.
Yeah.
Because on Krypton, they don't have any superpowers.
Yeah.
And so when you have part of the planet near him, it like causes him to lose his powers. I think that's how I understood it.
Yeah. I was about to spoil the second movie.
Oh, no.
I don't want to do that, so I'm going to bite my tongue.
Why are you going to make me watch the second movie, too?
It does contribute to this one. Yeah. Yeah, we need to watch, like, there's like 8 of them, I think.
No.
Why not?
We'll definitely do them, but I'm not doing them as a whole series right now because we have other movies to do during Suptember.
Well, of course, yeah.
How are you feeling about your pitch?
I'm actually feeling really confident about it.
Okay, maybe I'll go first then.
Okay.
Because I like my pitch, but it's maybe not the best I've ever done.
Okay.
So my movie starts out by introducing a boy in high school, and he seems to be... I went with an origin story, like a straight-up origin story. That's what I wanted to focus on. So he seems to be kind of nerdy and out of touch. He's not super athletic, but he's friendly enough. And we can basically get the scene with the football team and that Brad character. Mm-hmm. And instead of running past the train or whatever to beat them home, this kid actually like hits the Brad character in the face, like punches him. And this doesn't break any bones, and in fact the only thing that happens is Brad gets like really angry, and he's about to beat the shit out of this kid when another kid shows up, and he talks Brad down using his words. So the kid who actually punched Brad is James Olsen. We're supposed to think that's Clark.
Okay.
And the other kid who showed up and talked him down, that's Clark.
Okay.
Right? So they're all in like high school, and they're just regular kids, and it's all fine. So James and Clark are close friends, and they're like kind of super nerdy. They're both on like the school newspaper, and they have fun doing stuff like that. Basically, they are the school newspaper. But I wanted Clark to have like an interest in reporting before he was Superman, because otherwise he just like shows up and he's like, mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. So they're seniors in high school, and they're also joined by their friends Lana Lang and Linda Lee Danvers.
Okay.
And for the most part, they're like, the four of them are regular teenagers who try to figure out like what they're going to do before they graduate. In their final semester of high school, applying for universities, and Clark is torn because he wants to stay and help his parents, who are much older than all of his friends' parents, because he was adopted much later in their life. And they didn't have any children of their own. But, being adopted doesn't really bother Clark, but sometimes he wonders like why his parents gave him up. But he loves his adoptive parents very much. And he's an only child. Here we can see that Clark and Lana are kind of always flirting, but Clark is too shy to do anything. And we can have lots of fun with this kind of thing. Like they're sort of like shy and flirtatious around each other, but they're too shy to like Clark's too shy and Lana's too shy to like do anything. Actually, do you know the 6th Harry Potter?
Yep.
Like, just how comedic that is with all the magic going on in the background, but it's not, like, it's mostly about their interpersonal relationships. That's kind of the theme that I was going for here, like that tone, where it's, like, funny and high school, but, like, there's also weird things going on in the background.
Okay.
But that's the tone I wanted. So one night, they see a meteorite fall across the sky, like a shooting star, and no one's quite sure where the meteorite landed, but it's somewhere in the Midwest, which is, a huge fucking region of the United States. The next morning, Clark overhears Martha and Jonathan talking about the meteorite, about it being the same, and Martha worries how this might affect Clark if there's another one. Clark doesn't say anything to them that he overheard, but he does tell his friends that like his parents have never kept secrets from him as far as he knows. Like they've always been really open with each other. So Clark's dealing with the fact that he's not sure what he wants to do. He wants to leave for college, but he also wants to maybe look after his parents. Martha and Jonathan think that he's like really, really smart, but he should go work for himself. Like he's clever enough that he should go off and find work or go to school or whatever. Mine also takes place like in the time before cell phones, but not in the 70s. So maybe
like the
90s or early 2000s.
Okay.
Clark has a knack for reporting, as I said, and he works for the school newspaper, but he's like naturally interested in it. He also, at this point, we've noticed that Clark has no superpowers.
Okay.
So out of all of this, we've seen nothing that Clark has no superpowers. So it looks like James is also planning to go to college to become a reporter. And here we discover that Lana is really, really clever and has been sort of this like very, the perfect small town girl. Whereas Linda, who is still their friend, Linda Lee, has been much more like rebellious. She does well in school, but she's like far more like, and sometimes this causes like an antagonistic relationship between Linda Lee and Lana, but they're still friends. We also discover that Linda Lee doesn't live with her parents because they passed away in an accident some time ago, before Linda can remember Linda Lee. So instead, she lives with her oldest sister and her husband, and they have a 12-year-old girl named Alex that Linda also lives with, who essentially lives with as a sister, even though it's her cousin. And she's like, it's adorable, but I also like hate living with their like perfect country kind of household. Like we love each other so much, and we love our daughter, and you're totally welcome here, Linda. And Linda's like, it's disgusting. I don't care where I go, but I'm leaving. And I do appreciate that they let me in, but like I'm leaving.
Yeah.
She's a bit more rebellious. But this actually like sort of makes Clark and Linda Lee have more in common, because they both like lost their parents, and so like this sort of bonds them in a weird way, which changes the dynamic between Lana and Clark, and then James is just sort of kind of there. Poor James, but he's like the comedic relief, and he knows, he's just like, they don't see me that way, but they're still my friends. To make matters worse, it turns out that Lana has been accepted to Metropolis University with James, but Linda and Clark were both accepted into the University of Gotham.
Oh.
Yeah. So in order to try one last bid to outdo Linda Lee, Lana works up the courage to ask Clark to the end of year dance. Okay. Which he agrees to go to. So giddy, Clark goes home that night, only to be attacked by someone. So there's something like in the shadows that like is trying to like grab him, and Clark manages to fight it off, but like he's not strong, and this is like a weirdly strong person who can like grab and hold him, and he gets home and he's shaken, and he tells his parents, and they're like, oh, okay. Is there other people who are trying to kidnap people? Has anyone gone missing? But there's nothing in the papers, and none of their friends know anything. So that night, Clark can't sleep, and he keeps hearing noises outside. And when he goes outside, he sees the shadow of the same person who tried to catch him. But this time, it like comes out of the shadows, and we see a robot.
Oh,
it's a robot who tries to capture him. But this time, Clark manages to actually like fight the robot off, and we see Clark be like, "Whoa! Like this is a super strong robot that I can like fight off." And the robot retreats. So Jonathan and Martha reveal how they found Clark after he tells them everything that happened. They reveal how they found Clark, and that the robot looking for him might have something to do with like the meteorite, because the meteorite that fell across the sky is very similar to how they found Clark, obviously. But they also tell Clark that the pod that he landed in, the meteorite that he landed in, the reason they found it is because it didn't land in a field. It smashed through a house.
Oh.
It smashed through the Danvers house, leaving only Linda Lee surviving, who then has been living with her sister, her oldest sister, who's significantly older than her. So Clark is weary of like his new strength, and although this seems to be helping him with farm chores, he's like, he's also like having a hard time dealing with telling his friends, who he hasn't told yet, but also like being around Linda Lee, who he technically murdered. Her parents, not really, but he feels some guilt around that. On the farm, while Clark is like working one weekend, the robot appears again, and this time tries to grab Clark, but Clark, and it like flies off to try and grab Clark, and Clark can like realizes he can fly too, and so he starts like beating the crap out of this robot in the air. Like Clark's now flying, and this time he's gonna pull it limb from limb, but before he completely trashes it, he hears a message from the robot saying that there was an error in re-entry formation. And Clark's like, what? So he's like, I don't know what that means. An error in re-entry formation. So now Clark is juggling finishing exams. He's trying to deal with his like abilities, but he's also like, I think maybe I need to find this other pod, this other meteorite. But he's also feeling guilty over Linda Lee's parents, and like his friends are getting like really worried. So the night of the dance, Jonathan seems to be like a bit out of it. He's not feeling super well. So Clark's like, well, I can stay. Like, I don't have to go to the dance. I can help you with the chores. And Jonathan's like, no, like you don't get to go to the big dance, and you're not going to leave Lana waiting, because like, Martha and I have watched you grow up with Lana. And like we've seen what goes on between the two of you. Like this is finally something's happening. We didn't want to say anything, but like finally you're doing something, Clark. And Clark's like, okay. So he goes off and picks Lana up, and we can have more cute and funny scenes. And at the dance, a second robot appears. Ooh. This one is like shiny and new.
Okay.
And this one, basically Clark fights this thing, but he tries to like hide his abilities from the others. So like he moves it out into the yard and then like tries to like fly away without anyone noticing, and he manages to like to fight the thing off. And then this robot, because it's newer, basically explains like, I want to take you somewhere. Like I found another signature that I was looking for. I want to take you somewhere. And so he like this time Clark explains to James, Lana, and Linda what's been going on, and is like, I want to apologize to Linda, who's devastated because she's like, oh my god, like it was you're like an alien. And Clark's like, I'm gonna go follow this robot and figure out what's going on. And Lana, Linda, and James are all like, what the fuck just happened? And then Clark flies off. So Martha rushes into the gym right at that moment, right as Clark flies off, and basically she's in tears and looking for Clark, but Clark's not there. He's flown off with this robot. So Clark is led to the meteorite, so the robot is actually part of the pod itself and is sent out as a scout. So the first robot that Clark destroyed was the one from his own pod that received the signal when this pod landed to try and find him. So this one is part of this new pod, and it like transforms back into part of the pod and doesn't want to hurt Clark anymore. And inside the pod is a young girl of about 10 years old.
Okay.
And Clark opens the pod, and the girl wakes up, and she's speaking another language. And Clark's like, okay, well, she presses a few buttons on the pod, and then in English asks him if he is Kal-El. And Clark is like, I don't even know what that means. And the girl explains that her name is Kara Zor-El, and that she was sent to look after her cousin, who is a little baby. But the guy right in front of her looks a lot like her uncle. And she asks where the other pod is, and Clark is like, well, I was in the other pod, but like, I'm definitely not a baby. And Kara checks her pod, and it turns out the re-entry formation was because Kara was sent at the same time as Clark to try and, so that like her job was basically to look after Clark.
Yep.
She's his cousin, as the older cousin. But she got lost in the Phantom Zone for 17 years and has been in suspended animation for 17 years, which means Clark is now 18, but he was 1 when he was put in the pod. And so she's been stuck as a 10-year-old for 17 years, but she was sleeping the whole time. So Clark is basically like fascinated, like, oh my god, you're my family. And she's like, yeah, there's like a whole bunch of shit you don't know about. So when he returns with Kara, because they can both fly, it turns out that Jonathan passed away from a heart attack trying to do the chores that he was trying to do alone so that Clark could have fun at the dance.
No.
So Clark is devastated, and he seeks help from his friends. And Kara is also like scared and trying to understand all these new people and what's going on. And like Clark is like, I don't know what to do. So James is at a loss. Lana is actually freaked out by Clark being an alien and like is very distant. But Linda Lee, who realizes immediately who Kara is based on what Clark told them, basically says, you deal with this. I'll help Kara for now. Like, you need to go deal with this. So a few days later, after the funeral of Jonathan Clark, Clark says he's not going to university. Instead, he says he's going to spend some time learning all he can from Kara and making sure that she's comfortable. So he goes to the Danvers house, to Linda Lee's sister and her husband, and he introduces and explains, and he and Linda Lee basically explain everything to Linda Lee's sister and husband, who agree that they'll adopt Kara, and they introduce her to her new sister Alex, who's 2 years older than Kara. So Kara reveals that the pods have a computer on board that will allow Clark to hear all the information that she was supposed to teach him and learn herself. So Clark and Kara fly off to try and find a place where they can like set up all the computers, and they fly into the north, and they basically the two of them build the Fortress of Solitude and then set up the computers and whatnot to like make that work. And there they like fly home and back to the fortress all the time, but like there the two of them basically teach each other, where Kara teaches Clark everything she knows about Krypton and his past, and Clark teaches Kara everything that she'll need to like adapt into the present society of humans.
Yeah, like Earth.
For like Earth. And that's where we end, with the total possibility of a sequel.
Cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. I like that you made it more of like a discovering, like Superman discovering himself and not.
Yeah, I just ripped off Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's just Spider-Man. But I also hate, I mean, like, I'm not a huge fan of the Supergirl TV show, but I actually really like Kara as a character more than I like Superman. I think she's way cooler and like way more interesting as a character. Particularly because she's often in her cousin's shadow, and it's like you can do anything and sometimes more than Superman, and yet you're always in his shadow. Like, and so I'm always just like, I think as even as an expression of feminism, or like trying to figure out where super women fit into the world, it's like way more interesting. I just think she's a way more interesting character in general. But like, for instance, just as an example, and that's why I wanted to introduce her. I wanted the two of them, I wanted their stories to be intertwined instead of having it be like Supergirl as an afterthought, as is often the case when they do her story. She's often just like, oh yeah, and Supergirl is a thing. I wanted it to be like the two of them actually teach each other. And I want it to be more of like a sibling relationship between the two of them, even though they're cousins, like a familial relationship, where in the sequel I would probably do more around like two main characters, Clark trying to become a reporter, and then Kara also trying to like just deal with the fact that, you know, unlike Clark, she didn't integrate naturally. She like has a sister, right, who her adopted sister, and her adopted family that she's trying to like figure out. She also doesn't speak the language natively.
Yeah.
So just that kind of thing, like really explore that as a character. But as an example of why I think Supergirl gets shafted so much is when Superman's not available and there's a crisis, who do they call?
Batman.
And Batman's great, don't get me wrong. But yeah. Like Supergirl has all the same powers, or Power Girl, whatever, right? They're just different versions of the same person from different timelines or different Earths, Earth versions. They have all the same powers as Superman, and in some versions they're canonically stronger than he is, and yet we always call Batman. I don't know why. Yeah, I think that's an issue. Anyway, yeah, I really like that. I think just focusing on family and Clark discovering who he is would be really, really fun. And also, but they always do it where like he's like, oh, he's like a super child, and I was like, no, I want Clark to like grow up normally. I want to, as a character, I want to discover who Clark is and how Jonathan and Martha shaped him before he even knows he's special. You know, what is Clark actually? You know, that's why I didn't like Clark in this movie, because he's like more of a ponce when he comes back than he is when he's in high school. In high school, he's trying to figure out who he is, like everyone is. I think I want to see, and when I would introduce Clark in the next movie or whatever, back into Metropolis and have him try and get a job and whatnot as a reporter, I would still have that carry over. I wouldn't have him be like the kind of comedically oafish, maybe that's not the right term, clownishly mild-mannered as he is in this movie. I would want him to be like genuinely a nice guy who just sometimes lets himself get trampled over because he knows he could just fuck everyone over if he lost his temper.
Yeah.
Right? Pick your battles.
Yeah.
And also just, I think Supergirl's a way cooler character.
Yeah.
And should be integrated in his story. Okay, I'm done. Your turn.
Okay. I struggled a lot with coming up with the idea that I was actually going to do for my pitch, because I was like, oh, I could just do like, you know, my classic of like the gender swap. But then I was like,
it works.
No, I got to come up with something new.
But that's just Supergirl.
It's Supergirl, or, you know, maybe not Wonder Woman exactly, but, you know.
Well, Superwoman is also a thing. Like, so Lois Lane and Lana Lang have both been Superwoman at one point or another.
Yeah. So, like, there's already so many good female superheroes out there that I was like, I can't just do it because it's already been done. And then I was like, oh, turn it into a TV show. And I was like, I can't do that either.
You're just going through all the tropes. Gender swap, turn it into a TV show. The other trope that we often do is just change who's the main character. Tell the same story from another character's point of view.
Yep. And then the other one that I was thinking of was like kind of reverting Superman back to the I want to call it, again, like, original tropes, which was, like, he can leap over buildings.
Oh.
He can't fly. And, like, and he's just, like, super durable, but he still gets hurt. Like, he's not completely immune to all damage. So I was like, I can't do that, because then I have to start thinking about the science in the movie a little bit more. And I was like, I don't have the brain power for that. So I settled on Superman the Musical.
Oh, I would watch the shit out of that. And
So
you
there
can still keep all the
is-
cheesiness.
There actually is a Superman musical.
Oh, okay.
It was made in 1966. I looked it up because I was like, has this been done? It was made in 1966 for Broadway, and it was a complete flop.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's like the Spider-Man musical.
There's a Spider-Man
Yeah, and U2 did all the music.
Oh, no.
Which U2 is fine, it's just like, that's weird.
That's weird. For a musical, though. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, so here we go into Superman the Musical. So it's basically the same plot, but I just really wanted to outline the things that I changed and where the songs
Where
were.
the songs
so
would
I'll
be?
just-
Do you have
yeah,
names for
start
the
at the top.
songs?
No, I don't. I just
I
know what
wanna
they would be
be-
singing about.
A Superman. I want to beat those bad guys. Handily. I don't know, I'm just...
Yeah. Okay, so we start with Kal-El's parents singing to him as a baby, lamenting that their world is ending and that they're not rich enough to be able to evacuate with everyone else. But Jor-El was able to build a small shuttle for their son, and so they launch the shuttle, the planet starts falling apart, and then we see that the big rich people ship actually gets hit by one of those big crystals and cannot take off. The planet explodes. Short and sweet.
Is that all going to be in musical?
It's going to
Or is
be
it
a
just-
musical just until they send the sun off, and then the last bit is just going to be literally like
Okay.
screams
So
and explosions.
is the musical Jor-El and his wife singing to baby Superman? Okay, yeah. That's a good way to start.
Yeah. So out on Earth, because just, time skip. Out in the country, a meteor hits a farmer's field right next to Martha and John's truck. As they're driving, they get out and find a young boy, no longer the baby that had actually been sent in, from Krypton, because time has passed. And then the next song starts, which is talking about giving this alien boy, who they name Clark, a good place to fit in. During the song, Clark grows older, and it's like one of those...
Oh, like a montage song?
Like a montage
Oh,
song.
that's great.
And we see him at school earning good grades, kind of wishing that he could join the sports team, but eventually kind of deciding that his place would best be in the office because he has a hard time controlling his strength. So
Is this still also in song?
This is still also in song. So eventually, as the song goes on, it starts morphing into the I Want song.
Yes, good. Yay, you win 100. You get 100 from musical professor to Janglez.
Yeah. So it kind of becomes Martha and John being like, we want you to live a normal life, and him being like, but I'm not a normal boy. Like, there's something else happening, but I still, I can't leave you guys behind. You're my parents.
He wants much more than this provincial life.
Oh my god, no. So his I Want song is basically just he wants to work and be able to help keep his elderly parents and help them out as best he can, but he also really wants to know who he is or what he is. So at the end of the song, John has his heart attack and passes away, leaving Martha and Clark behind. So Clark finishes school that year, high school, and after the graduation ceremony, the I Want song comes back, but in a minor key.
Yeah.
With Clark singing that he needs to take care of his mother, but again, he needs to figure out who he is. Martha sings with him about needing to about letting Clark be his own person, because he's an adult now and he can make his own decisions. She just has to trust that her and John raised him right, And so she gives him the crystal that they saved after finding him in the meteor. And Clark leaves, and the song ends on like a nice happy key. Okay. Okay, so Clark takes the little money that he has, because he had been working a part-time job editing stuff for people. And so he saved up a little bit of money, and he was originally going to use that to go to college. But instead, he takes that money and goes on planes and trains as far north as he can. Once he's as far as that can take him, he treks the rest of the way on foot, following the crystal as it spins in his hand, you know, kind of directing him where to go. Yeah. As he gets close to his destination, the crystal he drops the crystal, and it rolls down a steep snowdrift and then starts growing into the Crystal Palace, because I still really thought that was cool. At this point, it's basically Frozen.
Let It
Frozen
Go?
Movie. Yeah, basically. So once in the palace, he's greeted by his Kryptonian parents. They're like almost being projected from the crystals. They speak to him and teach him how to read their lettering, and then once done, they tell him that they love him, and then he just disappears. So he learns through reading the different crystals, and I thought I had a really good idea for how this would work, and it would be more that the crystals were like almost like a little projector thing where you would put the crystal down in the sun, and then it would like project out the words.
Like a prism, yeah.
Yeah, like a prism. So I was like, that would be the way that I would do it, instead of just like a weird video screen type thing. It was so weird. So basically, he finds out through those crystals that his planet was destroyed and only the rich were to survive. He learns about his parents and the history of his planet, and then he also, there's a few scientific crystals there that kind of speculate what it would be like for a Kryptonian to live on Earth. And they also have other crystals about other different types of like solar systems. So he basically, while he's reading that, it kind of does like flashes into him trying the different things. So he tries flying, and it takes a little bit to get used to, but he eventually is able to do it. But he already knew that he was fast and strong. But he had never really been in the situation where he could have gotten really badly hurt. So he's like, I don't know, I might be impervious to damage, who knows? So Clark flies back home, now not needing money, and sees that Martha's doing well, and then he decides that because he now knows who he is, that he can return to his other goal, which was to get a good job and take care of his mother. So he ends up getting a job at the Daily Planet as an editor. And he struggles to keep not a writer. So he struggles to keep his identity a secret in a place with so many people everywhere. But after working with the news for a while, Clark also starts getting stressed about all the bad things going on. And he's like, I could help, I can do all these things, why don't I help? So the tipping point is the accident where Lois, his cute coworker, almost falls off the building in a freak accident with a helicopter. And he decides to save her, to hell with the rules that he's put on himself, because now this thing is happening right in front of him and he knows he can do something to fix it. So then he sings again, going into song, while going around Metropolis and saving people. And his song is about doing the right thing and how proud his mother will be to know that he is using his powers for good. The song is at that point then countered by Lex Luthor with Otis and Miss
Tessmacher,
singing about coming up with the crime of the century, because they just want to have some fun.
I've been planning the crime of the century. No, do you know that song?
No.
It's Supertramp. It's a great song.
But it's basically the same plan, just stupidly outlandish, where they're going to blow up California and then sell the desert land after it becomes prime real estate. So after the first few nights of Superman becoming a regular occurrence in Metropolis. Lois and Clark have their evening together, but it's not Clark, it's the super dude. And he takes her flying, and she doesn't have the weird soliloquy, and then he drops her off back again just to show up as the disguised Clark Kent waiting at her door, and then they head off to dinner.
During the flying section, you should have a song there.
I think so. I just didn't want it to be like Aladdin.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was literally just going to make a joke about Aladdin. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Yeah. I was like, it would work, but it also wouldn't work because I don't want to just have that same parallel. Okay, so the next morning, under the city, Lex is planning and singing with his group again while they are like reading through the newspaper and figuring out all the stuff with Superman. Basically, the same thing happens where Lex discovers there's a meteorite that they can use against him. And they hatch an additional part of his plan because he's worried that Superman might get in his way if he launches the missiles without taking care of him first. So the next day, Clark is editing a piece about a brutal killing and robbing for a small meteorite and doesn't really make the connection. He also finds out that Lois is out looking for a story about the land sales in the desert while he submits the final draft to the editing manager. So he then gets a call from Lex. I thought that using the sonic hearing was a good way. I thought that was cool. So I'll keep that in. Yeah, same thing with Lex's threatening to poison the city. Superman or Clark hurries over and makes his way through the traps as it was, and then Lex reveals his plan through song. Because obviously it just has to be like that. So they have a little fight scene after Clark gets weakened, and then the missiles are on their way. I keep forgetting her name. Miss
Eve Tessmacher.
Miss
Eve.
Yeah, Tessmacher.
Just Eve.
So Eve. Okay, Eve. That's much easier to remember.
Yeah.
So she saves Superman after finding out that one of the missiles is heading to where her mother lives, and Superman sympathizes with her sentiment, obviously. And then he stops the first missile with his bare hands because you can't just with the missiles. That was so weird. I was like, how can you control the missiles like that?
Yeah.
They had to manually go in and change the trajectory.
But they can just swoop around Superman.
Yeah. So that doesn't happen in mine. He stops the missile and throws it into space, but then is too late to stop the second missile. So he closes the crack in the ground, stops the dam water from destroying the town, and then here's Lois in her car. When he finds her, she's not breathing. He panics, knowing that he still has issues controlling his super strength, and might not be able to give her chest compressions without injuring her. So he flies her to the photography boy, whose name I also cannot remember.
James Olsen.
Thank you. Who he saved earlier, and he basically watches for a minute and then starts singing a sad solo while flying away. He's like, all these things that I can do and I can't save one life, because he's just assuming there that she's dead. But she doesn't actually die, and we see that, and he knows that too because he hears her
heartbeat. Yeah,
her heartbeat again. But they don't have a moment. He's still flying off because he's got things to do. So he flies off and catches Lex and Otis about to feed Eve to the things that Lex keeps in. I don't know what those were.
Are. Yeah.
And he scoops them up and drops them off at prison. After that is done, he stops at home to see if his mother is all right, but he doesn't actually call out to her. He just checks in from afar.
Yeah.
Then he heads back to work where everyone is frantic and crazy, and he immediately gets to work to help them because that's his job as an editor. There's big stories coming out right now. And so all together for the ending, the members of Daily Planet sing together, ending on a song about how they get their satisfaction from a hard day's work.
And the double entendre is that so does Superman.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go. I would love to see Lex do the song calling Superman out, the one where they do the high pitch thing.
Yeah.
But Lex has to sing this whole song like, I know you're there, because it's all high pitched. That'd be terrible. Don't actually do that, but just because it's that cheesy. No, I like it. I think it's a great take to like do something like really cheesy with a an already cheesy movie. So why not make it a musical? It just it's already there. It might as well work.
Stack the cheese. We're talking brie. We're talking mozzarella, cheddar. Stack it on.
I was waiting for you to name other cheeses.
I can't remember. Gouda.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I think we've got some really good, like you went the really cheesy. I tried to make mine like a bit more serious, like of the superhero movies that we've had recently and try to go that route. And you were just like, nah, the cheesiness works. And that's why this movie works for you and for me. But you were just like, let's just make it a musical. Musicals are inherently cheesy.
I think that there's a trend in me as a child watching a lot of these like spectacular old movies. Like we've done now Superman.
Yeah.
I've talked about how Star Wars was like so amazing.
Yeah.
And then
we did Burlesque.
And what was the other one that we did with the Zorro?
Yeah.
And
we've just been working through your childhood.
Yeah, honestly. And it's all of these movies that we've done or talked about at least. They're just so cheesy and I love them, but they're also they don't make movies like that anymore.
Yeah,
and
true.
I wish that they
actually
did.
I will say like I watched Jungle Cruise in the summer for the long and the short of it, and that movie is like that kind of cheesy. It's just like new age cheesy. So it still follows like Hollywood's current trends, but like if you watched it, I think you'd like it. It has that kind of like cheese factor to it.
Yeah.
So because cheese is great. But one of the things that I like about these movies is that they can still be great and still be kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Much like Zorro. Zorro was fun, but it was dumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just working our way through your childhood.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
You can find me at twitch.tv/AlyssaLou with 3 O's or on Instagram at Alyssa Rose Handmade.
You can find our band Robot Philosopher anywhere you listen to dope music. You can also catch more episodes of this podcast, as well as the long and the short of it, as well as This Is a Thing. And this is the first episode in our Suptember series, so it's all superhero-related stuff all month long. So this is just the first. There'll be 2 episodes of This Is a Thing, superheroes, and 3 more episodes of the Cinemasters podcast, all on different superheroes. So they won't all be about Superman. Like it's not a full series that way. We're not doing the next 3. We'll get to those eventually, but so stick around for that. And thanks so much for hanging out with us. Peace out.
Bye.